My name is Hannah, and I am 34 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and for 8 years I believed I had the perfect marriage. My husband Derek was everything I ever wanted. A hard-working man, a loving partner, someone I trusted with my whole heart. But trust, I learned, can be the most dangerous thing you give to the wrong person. It started with a single text message, and what I discovered after that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about truth betrayal and finding your strength resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Have you ever trusted someone completely only to realize you never really knew them at all? Stay with me, because what happened next will shock you. I still remember the exact moment I fell in love with Derek. It was a warm Saturday evening in June, 6 years before we got married. Centennial Park was hosting one of those free outdoor concerts that Nashville is famous for, and I had gone alone because my friends canceled at the last minute. The grass was packed with blankets and lawn chairs, families with kids running around, couples holding hands, groups of friends sharing bottles of wine they had sneaked in. I found a spot near the back, spreading out my old checkered blanket that I had owned since college. The band was playing classic country covers, and I was content just sitting there, letting the music wash over me. Then the sky started to darken. Not gradually, the way summer evenings usually fade, but suddenly with those heavy gray clouds that roll in fast and mean business. People started scrambling. Blankets were snatched up, chairs folded, everyone rushing toward the parking lot or the pavilion for cover. I was slower to move, trying to gather my things when the first fat raindrops started falling. That is when I noticed him. He was standing under the only large oak tree nearby, and there was a single metal bench beneath it. He was already seated, but when he saw me struggling with my blanket and bag while getting pelted by rain, he stood up immediately. "Come on," he called out, waving me over. "There is room." I ran toward the tree, my sandals slipping on the wet grass. By the time I reached the bench, I was already half soaked. He scooted over to make room, and I sat down, catching my breath. "Thanks," I said, pushing wet hair out of my face. "I probably look like a drowned cat right now." He laughed, more like a very determined mermaid who took a wrong turn. That made me laugh too, and just like that, we started talking. His name was Derek, he told me. He was 29, had just been promoted to a senior position at a real estate investment firm downtown. He talked about his work with enthusiasm but not arrogance, explaining how he helped manage financial portfolios for commercial properties. The rain kept falling, but neither of us seemed to mind anymore. We talked about music, and I discovered he loved the same classic country artists I did. We talked about food, and he insisted that hot chicken was overrated and that the real Nashville specialty was meat and three. I disagreed completely, and we debated that point for at least 20 minutes. 3 hours passed without either of us noticing. The rain had stopped long ago, the concert had ended, the park had emptied out, and we were still sitting on that bench, talking like we had known each other for years. When I got home that night, I could not stop smiling. I told my roommate everything, and she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Hannah, you just described finding your missing puzzle piece," and that is exactly what it felt like. Derek and I dated for 2 years before he proposed. He did it in Centennial Park, right next to that same oak tree where we first met. He had coordinated with some of my friends to get me there under the pretense of a birthday picnic, even though my birthday was still 2 months away. When I saw him down on one knee, I burst into tears before he even finished asking the question. Our wedding was small and intimate, exactly what we both wanted. We held the ceremony at a little white chapel on the outskirts of Franklin, surrounded by rolling green hills and old stone walls covered in ivy. Only 80 guests attended, mostly close family and friends. My mother cried through the entire ceremony and told me afterward that Derek was the finest man she had ever seen me with. That night, lying in our hotel room after the reception, I felt something I had never experienced before: complete safety. Derek held me close and whispered that he would spend the rest of his life making me happy. I believed him with every fiber of my being. We bought our first house about a year after the wedding. It was a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood in Franklin with a big backyard and a wraparound porch, perfect for summer evenings. We painted the walls together, picked out furniture at estate sales, planted a vegetable garden that mostly failed but gave us plenty of laughs. Derek continued climbing the ladder at his company, eventually becoming a director of finance. I worked as a human resources manager at a regional hospital, a job that was demanding but fulfilling. We fell into comfortable routines. Sunday dinners were for cooking together, always something elaborate that usually turned out only half right. Friday nights were for movies on the couch with too much popcorn. We went to church most Sundays, took weekend trips to the Smoky Mountains, hosted barbecues for neighbors. The only shadow over our happiness was the absence of children. We started trying after our 2nd anniversary. Nothing happened. Then a 3rd year passed, and a 4th. Doctors ran tests and found nothing wrong with either of us. Just one of those things they said. We talked about IVF, started saving money for it, researched clinics. Sometimes I wondered if Derek was disappointed. He always said he was not, that he was happy with just me, that children would come when they were meant to come. I chose to believe him because doubting him never even crossed my mind. But looking back now, I can see the first warning sign for what it was. It happened about 2 years before everything fell apart. Derek started coming home later from work. Not dramatically late, just an extra hour here and there. Big project, he would say. The Henderson account needs extra attention. I never questioned it. Why would I? This was Derek. My Derek. The man who still left love notes in my lunchbox, who still held my hand during movies, who still kissed my forehead every morning before leaving for work. One evening, he left his phone on the kitchen counter when he went to take a shower. It buzzed with a text message. I saw the notification pop up on the screen. It was from a number not saved in his contacts. Just a name. M. The message preview showed only a few words. Thinking about you. I stared at that notification for what felt like an eternity. My thumb hovered over the screen. All I had to do was tap and read the full message. But I did not. Because good wives trust their husbands. Because reading someone else's private messages is wrong. Because surely there was an innocent explanation. When Derek came out of the shower, I mentioned it casually. You got a text while you were in there. From someone named M. He picked up his phone without missing a beat. Oh, that is probably Marcus from accounting. We have been going back and forth about some budget projections. He glanced at the screen, typed something quickly, and set the phone down. Nothing important. I nodded and went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that 8 years of trust should not be shaken by one ambiguous text message. But that night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that something had shifted in our home. Something I could not quite name, but could definitely feel. The changes in Derek were so gradual that at first I could convince myself I was imagining them. It started with small things. He joined a gym downtown, which was fine, except he had never shown any interest in working out before. He bought new clothes, nicer ones, tailored shirts, and fitted pants that were different from his usual casual style. He started using a different cologne, something woodsy and expensive that I did not recognize. When I commented on these changes, he just smiled and said he wanted to take better care of himself. Turning 37 next year, he said, "Figured I should try to stay in shape." I found his explanation reasonable, even flattering in a way. Here was my husband wanting to look good, and I assumed part of that was for me. So I complimented his new look, told him the gym was paying off, bought him a watch that matched his new wardrobe for his birthday. But then other things started changing too. Things I could not explain away so easily. The late nights became more frequent. 2 or 3 times a week, Derek would call around 5 to say he would not make it home for dinner. "Do not wait up, babe," he would say. "This Henderson deal is killing me." I always waited up anyway, keeping his dinner warm in the oven, falling asleep on the couch with the TV on low, until I heard his car pull into the driveway. Sometimes that was not until 11 or even midnight. When he came home those nights, he seemed different, distracted. He would kiss me on the forehead, thank me for dinner, then disappear into the shower before going straight to bed. The intimacy between us faded. At first, it happened slowly, then more noticeably. We went from being close several times a week to barely once every couple of weeks. When I tried to initiate, Derek often said he was tired, stressed, not in the mood. I told myself it was just a phase. All marriages go through dry spells. Work stress can affect anyone. I tried to be supportive rather than demanding. Tried to give him space while still showing him I was there. The phone calls were what really started making me suspicious. They always came at odd hours, and Derek always took them in another room. If we were watching TV and his phone rang, he would glance at the screen, mutter something about work, and walk out to the garage or the backyard to take the call. Sometimes I could hear his voice through the walls, low and muffled, occasionally laughing in a way that sounded different, softer, more intimate. Once I woke up at 2 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. I walked through the house and found him sitting on the back porch in the dark, phone pressed to his ear, speaking so quietly I could not make out the words. When he saw me in the doorway, he quickly said goodbye and ended the call. "Work emergency," he said, standing up. "One of our international clients is in a different time zone. Go back to sleep." I went back to bed, but I did not go back to sleep. The company holiday party was held in early December at a rooftop venue downtown. Derek insisted I come, which surprised me because the year before he had said spouses were not really expected to attend these things. But this year, he wanted me there. Looking back, I think he wanted to show me off to prove to himself that everything was still normal, that he was still the faithful husband he pretended to be. The venue was stunning, all twinkling lights and views of the Nashville skyline. I wore a burgundy dress I had bought just for the occasion and spent extra time on my hair and makeup. Derek told me I looked beautiful, and for a moment, it felt like old times. Then I met Meredith. She approached us about an hour into the party holding a champagne flute and wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my entire closet. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her smile revealed teeth so white they seemed to glow. "Derek," she said, her voice bright and familiar. "So glad you could make it. And this must be Hannah. I have heard so much about you." Derek introduced her. "Hannah, this is Meredith. She has been my assistant on the Henderson project. Absolutely indispensable." Meredith laughed and touched Derek's arm. "Oh, stop. You are making me blush." She turned to me. "Your husband is such a perfectionist. We have been working so many late nights to get everything just right." Something about the way she touched his arm bothered me. It was too comfortable, too easy. And the way she said late nights, there was something in her tone that felt wrong. But I smiled and played the part of the gracious wife. "Well, I appreciate you helping him out. I know how stressed he has been." After Meredith walked away to greet other colleagues, I watched her move through the crowd. She was young, probably late 20s, confident in a way that came from knowing she was the most attractive person in the room, and she kept glancing back at Derek, catching his eye in a way that made my stomach tighten. On the drive home, I mentioned it carefully. "She seems nice." Meredith. Derek kept his eyes on the road. "Yeah, she is great, very talented. She seems very comfortable with you." He shrugged. "We work closely together. You spend 60 hours a week with someone you get comfortable." I let it drop, but I did not forget. A few days after the party, I met my best friend Jenna for lunch at our usual spot, a little cafe near my office. Jenna and I had been friends since freshman year of college. She was a divorce lawyer now, one of the best in the city, and she had seen every kind of marital disaster imaginable. I found myself telling her everything: the late nights, the phone calls, the new cologne, the way Meredith had touched Derek's arm. Jenna listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. When I finished, she set down her coffee cup and looked at me with something that was not quite pity, but close. "Hannah," she said gently, "I see this every day in my office. The signs you are describing are classic. I am not saying Derek is definitely cheating, but I am saying you need to trust your instincts. Women always know before they admit it. I felt defensive immediately. That is your job. Talk talking. You see cheating everywhere because that is all you deal with. Maybe Jenna conceded, or maybe I see it because I have learned to recognize it. She paused. Look, I hope I am wrong. I really do. Derek always seemed like one of the good ones. But promise me you will pay attention. Do not ignore what your gut is telling you. I promised mostly to end the conversation, but that night lying in bed while Derek slept beside me, Jenna's words echoed in my head. Women always know before they admit it. The discovery happened on a Tuesday evening about 2 weeks after the holiday party. Derek had come home from work and gone straight to the shower, which had become his routine. He left his phone on the nightstand face up. I was folding laundry on the bed when it buzzed. I did not mean to look, but the screen was right there, and my eyes caught the notification before I could look away. I miss you already. Tonight was perfect. M. My heart stopped. For a long moment, I just stared at those words, my brain refusing to process what they meant. Tonight was perfect. That implied they had been together that evening. Derek had told me he had a late meeting. He came home at 9:30. Tonight was perfect. I heard the shower turn off. Without thinking, I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen was locked, but I knew his passcode, our anniversary date. How bitterly ironic. I unlocked it and opened the message thread with M, and there it was. Months of messages, hundreds of them, sweet nothings and inside jokes and plans to meet, explicit descriptions that made me want to throw up. The bathroom door opened. Derek stepped out in his towel, steam billowing behind him. He saw me holding his phone, and for just a second his face showed pure panic before he composed himself. "What are you doing with my phone?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Who is M. Derek, I told you? Marcus from accounting." I held up the phone, showing him the screen. Marcus from accounting does not send messages saying tonight was perfect and I miss you already. Derek walked toward me slowly, his expression shifting from guilty to irritated. "You went through my phone? That is a violation of my privacy." The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. I asked again, "Who is M?" He stared at me for a long moment. Then something in his face changed, a kind of resignation mixed with what almost looked like relief. "It is Meredith," he said finally. "Meredith from work. And before you start accusing me of things, it is just harmless flirting. She has a crush on me. I have been trying to let her down gently without making things awkward at the office. I read the messages, Derek. All of them. That is not harmless flirting. That is an affair." He tried to deny it. He tried to gaslight me to make me feel crazy for jumping to conclusions. But I had read those messages. I had seen the pictures she sent, the plans they made, the things they said to each other. When I finally confronted him with specific details from the texts, his defenses crumbled. He sat down on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. "How long?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. He did not look up. 8 months. 8 months. That meant it started in the spring, while I was planning our anniversary trip, while I was researching fertility clinics, while I was lying next to him every night believing with all my heart that we were partners, best friends, soulmates. He looked up at me then, and what I saw in his eyes was not remorse. It was something closer to frustration, like I was the one who had done something wrong by discovering his secret. "It just happened," he said. "I did not plan it. Meredith. She understands me in ways you do not." I felt like I had been kicked in the chest. After everything I had given him, after 8 years of my life, he was sitting there telling me that another woman understood him better. I walked out of the bedroom without another word. I spent that night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 8 months in my mind, every late night, every shower immediately after coming home, every time he had said, "I love you," while carrying on an affair behind my back. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I had seen enough movies, read enough books, listened to enough songs about heartbreak, but nothing prepared me for the physical reality of it, the way your body actually aches, the way you cannot eat, cannot sleep, cannot think about anything else. By morning, I had made a decision. I would not be a victim. I would not cry and beg and ask him to change. I would get proof, real proof, and then I would figure out what to do next. The days following my discovery of Derek's affair felt like moving through deep water. Everything was slower, heavier, harder. I went through the motions at work, smiled when I was supposed to smile, answered questions without really hearing them. Inside, I was drowning, but I was also planning. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. I created a new email account that Derek did not know about and forwarded myself screenshots of credit card statements I found in his desk drawer. Restaurant charges at places we never went together. A $500 purchase at a jewelry store I had never heard of. Hotel bookings on nights he told me he was working late. Each piece of evidence was another knife in my heart, but I kept gathering them anyway. I needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal before I decided what to do next. Jenna connected me with Raymond Walker, a private investigator she had worked with on many divorce cases. He was 52 years old, a former detective with the Nashville Police Department with a weathered face and tired eyes that had seen too much of the worst in people. We met at a coffee shop on the other side of town, far from anywhere Derek or his colleagues might spot us. I felt like a spy in a movie, except there was nothing glamorous about it. Just a wife who needed proof that her husband was exactly who she feared he was. Raymond listened to my story without interruption, occasionally jotting notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, he looked at me with something like compassion. "Mrs. Lawson," he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. "In 20 years of doing this job, 70% of my clients already know the answer before they hire me. They just need proof." He paused. "What do you need the proof for? Divorce, leverage, peace of mind?" I thought about it. "All of the above," I said finally. "I need to know how deep this goes before I decide what to do." He nodded. "I charge $200 a day plus expenses. I will need 2 weeks minimum to build a solid file. Photos, timestamps, patterns of behavior. The kind of documentation that holds up in court if it comes to that." I wrote him a check for $2,000 right there in the coffee shop. It was money from my personal savings account, money I had been setting aside for the fertility treatments Derek and I had discussed. The irony was not lost on me. For the next 10 days, I lived a double life. At home, I pretended everything was normal. I cooked dinners Derek barely touched. I asked about his day and listened to his lies with a straight face. I even slept beside him in our bed, though I made sure to stay on my side, unable to bear his touch. Meanwhile, I knew Raymond was out there somewhere watching my husband, documenting his movements, capturing proof of his double life. The wait was excruciating. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. Every time Derek left for work, I wondered where he was really going. Every time he smiled at me, I saw the face of a stranger. On day 10, Raymond called. We met at the same coffee shop. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "I am sorry, Mrs. Lawson," he said quietly. "It is worse than you probably expected." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Derek and Meredith walking into a boutique hotel downtown, his hand on the small of her back. Derek and Meredith kissing in his car in the company parking garage. Derek and Meredith sharing dinner at a candlelit restaurant, holding hands across the table. But the photo that broke me was the last one. It showed Meredith leaving Derek's car one morning wearing a bracelet on her wrist. A delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant. I recognized it immediately because Derek had shown it to me 2 months earlier. He said it was a birthday gift for his mother. I closed the envelope and sat there for a long moment, unable to speak. Raymond waited patiently. "What do I do now?" I finally asked. "That depends on what you want," he said. "If you want a divorce, this gives you everything you need. If you want to confront him first, that is your choice too. But I would recommend talking to a lawyer before you make any moves." I thanked him, paid his final invoice, and drove home in a daze. The envelope sat on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. That night, I confronted Derek with everything. I spread the photos across our kitchen table and watched his face go through a dozen expressions: shock, anger, fear. And finally, that strange resignation I had seen before. He did not even try to deny it this time. He just sat there staring at the photos of himself with another woman. I asked him the question that had been burning in my chest for days. Why, after everything we built together? Why his answer destroyed whatever remaining love I had left for him? I do not know how to explain it, he said. Meredith makes me feel alive in a way I have not felt in years. She is passionate and exciting, and she actually wants a life with me, and I do not. You want a baby, Hannah. You have been obsessed with it for years. You barely look at me anymore. You look through me to this imaginary child we cannot seem to create. The cruelty of that statement took my breath away, blaming me for our fertility struggles, blaming me for wanting a family, making his affair somehow my fault. I think we need some space. Derek continued, his voice taking on a businesslike tone that felt almost rehearsed. I will stay at a hotel for a few days. We can talk about next steps when things calm down. He went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. Just like that. 8 years of marriage reduced to a single suitcase and a door closing behind him. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after he left, surrounded by photographs of my husband with another woman. I did not cry. The pain was too deep for tears. It felt like a physical wound, like something vital had been torn out of me. When I finally moved, I gathered up all the photos and put them back in the envelope. Then I sat down at the table and started making a list of lawyers Jenna had recommended. If Derek wanted out of this marriage, I would make sure I got everything I deserved on the way out. The next few weeks were a nightmare I could not wake up from. Derek did not stay at a hotel for a few days as he had claimed. He moved directly in with Meredith. I found out from a mutual friend who saw them together at a restaurant looking cozy and happy, and not at all like two people who had destroyed a marriage. A week after he left, Derek called me. His voice was flat, unemotional, as if he were discussing a business transaction. I think we should get divorced, he said. Clean break. We can divide everything fairly and move on with our lives. I was too shocked to respond at first. Divorce. The word I had never imagined applying to my own life. Why the rush, I finally managed to ask. Because Meredith is pregnant, he said, and I want to start my new life with her. The world tilted sideways. Pregnant. After 5 years of me trying desperately to conceive after all the doctors and tests and tears, Derek had gotten his 28-year-old mistress pregnant in less than a year. Maybe the problem was us, not me. Derek added, as if he were offering some kind of scientific observation. Clearly I can have children. I just could not have them with you. I hung up without saying goodbye. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and screamed until my throat was raw. Derek came by the house a few days later to collect more of his belongings. I could not even look at him. I sat in the bedroom with the door locked while he moved through our home, taking things we had chosen together, erasing himself from our shared history, piece by piece. Before he left, he knocked on the bedroom door. Hannah, I know this is hard, but we will get through it. Let us keep this civil. I did not answer. I heard him sigh, then heard his footsteps retreating, then heard the front door close. When I was sure he was gone, I finally let myself cry. The days that followed blurred together. I called in sick to work for a week, unable to face my colleagues, unable to pretend everything was fine. I barely ate. I barely slept. I moved through the house like a ghost, touching things that reminded me of Derek, then hating myself for missing him. My mother called every day, but I could not bring myself to tell her the truth. She had been so happy at our wedding. She had believed in Derek completely. How could I tell her that her perfect son-in-law was a cheater who had abandoned me for a younger woman? Jenna came over on the 4th day armed with takeout containers and a bottle of wine. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug that lasted 5 minutes. You look terrible, she said gently, but you are going to survive this. I have seen 1,000 women go through exactly what you are going through, and they all come out the other side. How I asked, how do they survive feeling like this? One day at a time, she said, and with good lawyers. She stayed with me that night, sleeping on the couch, so I would not be alone. In the morning, she helped me wash my hair and put on real clothes for the first time in days. Small steps, she kept saying. You take small steps until you can take bigger ones. The worst part came about 2 weeks after Derek left. Meredith posted on social media a picture of herself and Derek at some fancy restaurant, her hand resting on her barely visible baby bump, a massive diamond engagement ring on her finger. The caption read, "New chapter begins. So blessed." Derek's comment underneath said, "My future, my everything." My former coworker Sarah sent me the screenshot. She had meant well, I think. She thought I should know what was being said publicly. But seeing those words, seeing them so happy while I was falling apart, broke something inside me. I spent the rest of that day deleting every social media account I had. I could not bear to see any more updates about their perfect new life. I could not stand the thought of mutual friends watching both of us comparing her pregnancy glow to my devastation. That night, I hit rock bottom. I sat in the bathtub for hours, the water going cold around me, wondering how I had ended up here. I was 34 years old. I had given the best years of my life to a man who threw me away like garbage. I had no children, a broken marriage, and a future I could not even imagine. I thought about giving up, not on life itself, but on ever being happy again. Maybe some people just were not meant to have good things. Maybe I was one of them. But somewhere deep inside me, a small voice refused to accept that. "This is not how your story ends," it whispered. "This is just the worst chapter. The next one can be different." I held on to that voice like a lifeline. I did not know yet how right it would turn out to be. The phone call that changed everything came on a Wednesday afternoon exactly 3 weeks after Derek had left. I was sitting at my kitchen table trying to force down some soup when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost did not answer. I had been ignoring most calls, unable to face another sympathetic friend or another bill collector asking about accounts Derek had apparently neglected. But something made me pick up. Hannah. The voice was female, older, familiar but unexpected. "This is Patricia, Derek's mother." My heart clenched. I had always liked Patricia. She was a warm woman in her late 60s, widowed for 5 years, the kind of mother-in-law who remembered birthdays and sent handwritten cards for every holiday. I had not spoken to her since Derek left, too ashamed to reach out. "Patricia," I said, my voice catching. "I am so sorry I have not called. I just could not face anyone." "Honey, you have nothing to apologize for." She paused. "That is actually why I am calling. I need to tell you something important. Can we meet in person?" We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near her home the next afternoon. I spent the entire drive wondering what she could possibly want to tell me. Maybe she was going to defend Derek. Maybe she wanted to explain his side of things. Maybe she just wanted to say goodbye to the daughter-in-law she would never see again. But when I saw her face as I walked into the cafe, I knew it was none of those things. Patricia looked troubled, conflicted, like she was carrying a weight she could no longer bear alone. She hugged me tightly before we sat down. "You look thin," she said. "You need to take care of yourself, sweetheart. I am trying." We ordered coffee, and for a few minutes we just made small talk. The weather, her garden, her book club. I could tell she was working up to something, so I waited. Finally, she put down her cup and looked at me directly. "Hannah, what my son did to you was unforgivable. I raised him better than that, and I am ashamed of him." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you for saying that. But that is not why I asked you here." She glanced around the cafe, lowering her voice. "There is something you need to know. Something I have been keeping secret for years because Derek asked me to. But after what he did to you, after seeing him parade around with that woman while you suffer, I cannot stay quiet anymore." My heart started racing. "What is it?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Before Derek met you, he was involved with another woman. Her name was Sandra. They dated for about 2 years. I nodded slowly. Derek had mentioned her once very briefly as a college girlfriend. Nothing serious, he had said. What he did not tell you, Patricia continued, is that Sandra got pregnant. And when she did, Derek panicked. He denied the baby was his. He accused her of cheating, of trying to trap him. He broke up with her and refused any contact. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Sandra had the baby, a little girl. Her name is Lily. She turned 10 years old in September. 10 years old. That meant Derek had fathered a child before we even met. A child he had never once mentioned in 8 years of marriage. I do not understand, I said. How could he just abandon his own child? Patricia's eyes were wet. I begged him to take a DNA test, begged him to at least know for sure. But he refused. He said the baby was not his, and that was final. He told me that if I ever contacted Sandra myself, he would never speak to me again. So you just accepted that I was a coward, Patricia admitted. I did not want to lose my son. So I stayed quiet and tried to convince myself that maybe he was right. Maybe the baby really was not his. But then a few months ago, Sandra reached out to me again. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young girl with dark hair and familiar features. She had Derek's eyes, his jawline, his slightly crooked smile. She is 10 years old now, Patricia said, and she wants to know who her father is. Sandra has been raising her alone all this time, working double shifts as a nurse to pay the bills. All she wants is for Derek to take a DNA test so Lily can know the truth, and Derek still refuses. Patricia nodded. He says it would complicate things, especially now with Meredith pregnant. He does not want anyone to know he already has a child out there. I looked at the photograph for a long time. This little girl, abandoned by her father, the same way I had been abandoned. Both of us discarded when we became inconvenient. Why are you telling me this? I asked Patricia. Because I think Lily deserves to know her father, and I think you deserve to know who you were really married to. She slid a piece of paper across the table. This is Sandra's phone number and address. She lives in Knoxville, about 3 hours from here. Do with it what you will. I took the paper, my mind already racing with possibilities. This was bigger than Derek's affair with Meredith. This was a decade-long pattern of lies and abandonment. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The drive to Knoxville took 3.5 hours. I spent most of it rehearsing what I would say to Sandra, a woman I had never met, but who had been hurt by the same man who hurt me. Sandra lived in a modest apartment complex near the hospital where she worked. When she opened the door, I saw a woman about my age with tired eyes and cautious posture. She was pretty, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and scrubs that suggested she had just come off a shift. "You must be Hannah," she said. "Patricia said you might come." She invited me inside. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with photographs of Lily at various ages. School pictures, birthday parties, soccer games, the life of a child growing up without knowing her father. We sat at her kitchen table and Sandra told me her story, how she and Derek had met in college, how they had fallen in love, how everything changed when she found out she was pregnant. He accused me of cheating. She said, her voice flat from years of repeating this story, said the baby could not possibly be his. He never even gave me a chance to prove him wrong, just disappeared from my life completely. Did you try to find him for the first few years? Yes. But he blocked my number, blocked me on social media, threatened legal action if I contacted him at work. Eventually, I gave up. She shrugged. I figured Lily was better off without a father who did not want her than with one who resented her. I showed her the divorce papers Derek's lawyer had sent. I told her about Meredith, about the pregnancy, about how Derek was building a new family while denying his existing daughter. Sandra listened quietly, and when I finished, her eyes were hard. "So he can have children," she said. "He just could not be bothered to be a father to the one he already had." I pulled out the photograph Patricia had given me. She looks exactly like him. I know. Every time I look at her, I see his face, but he refused to take a DNA test. Said he did not need to prove anything because he already knew the truth. That is when I told her my idea. I still had some of Derek's belongings at the house: his old toothbrush, a hairbrush he had left behind, items with his DNA. "Would you be willing to send those to a lab?" Sandra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To finally prove what I have known for 10 years. "Yes," I said, "and I want to be there when he sees the results." The DNA test results took 12 days to come back. 12 days of waiting, of hoping, of imagining the look on Derek's face when he realized his decade of lies was finally over. When the envelope arrived at Sandra's apartment, we opened it together. My hands were shaking so badly she had to help me tear it open. The letter was full of scientific language and probability calculations, but the conclusion was clear, printed in bold at the bottom of the page. Probability of paternity, 99.98%. Derek was Lily's father. The proof was undeniable, written in black and white by a laboratory with no stake in the outcome. Sandra started crying, not sad tears, but relieved ones. 10 years, she kept saying. 10 years of him calling me a liar. 10 years of raising our daughter alone. And now everyone will know the truth. I held her while she cried, this woman I had known for only a few weeks, but who felt like a sister in suffering. We had both been deceived by the same man. We had both been discarded when we became inconvenient. And now we were going to make sure he faced the consequences. Over the next few days, I contacted Jenna for legal advice. As a divorce lawyer, she knew exactly how to use this information. "This is gold, Hannah," she said, reviewing the DNA results and the documentation I had gathered. "Not only does this prove Derek has been lying about Lily for 10 years, but Sandra can file for back child support. 10 years of missed payments plus interest. We are talking about serious money. But more importantly," Jenna continued, "this changes everything about your divorce. Derek wanted to paint himself as the reasonable one, the guy who just fell out of love and wanted to move on. Now you can prove he is a serial liar and abandoner. Any judge is going to see him differently." I asked Jenna to help me plan the confrontation. I did not just want to mail Derek the DNA results. I wanted him to see them. I wanted to watch his face when his lies came crashing down around him. We settled on a dinner meeting. I called Derek's lawyer and said I wanted to discuss the divorce terms in person, somewhere neutral. I suggested a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place where people discuss business deals and celebrated promotions. Derek agreed immediately. He probably thought I was finally being reasonable, finally accepting my defeat. I had one request, I told his lawyer. I would like Meredith to be there as well. Since she's going to be part of Derek's life going forward, it seems right that she should be present for this discussion. There was a pause on the line. The lawyer probably thought I was crazy, but he agreed to pass along the request. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say, imagining Derek's reaction, picturing Meredith's face when she learned the truth about the man she was planning to marry. Sandra drove down from Knoxville that morning, bringing Lily with her. We had discussed whether the little girl should be present, and Sandra ultimately decided yes. Lily deserved to see her father acknowledge her existence, even if it was forced. At 7:00, I walked into the restaurant alone. Derek and Meredith were already there, seated at a table near the back, with Derek's lawyer. Meredith's baby bump was more pronounced now, maybe 6 months along. She wore a smug expression, like she had already won. Derek stood when he saw me approaching. He was wearing the confident smile I used to love. "Hannah," he said, "I am glad you agreed to this meeting. I think we can work everything out like adults." I sat down across from them, my purse containing the envelope that would destroy his carefully constructed new life. Before we discussed the divorce terms, I said calmly, "There is someone I would like you to meet." I turned toward the restaurant entrance and nodded. Sandra walked in, holding Lily's hand. The little girl was wearing a pretty dress and had her dark hair in braids. She looked nervous but determined. Derek's face went white. For a long moment, he just stared, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Meredith looked confused. "Who are they?" she asked. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Inside, I said, is a DNA test proving that Derek is the biological father of that little girl. Her name is Lily. She is 10 years old, and Derek has been lying about her existence since before he met me. I slid the envelope across the table. Derek did not touch it. His hands were shaking. "Sandra," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Sandra stepped forward, keeping Lily slightly behind her. "I am here because our daughter deserves to know her father, and because you need to stop running from the truth." Derek's lawyer picked up the envelope and scanned the contents. His expression shifted from confusion to concern to barely concealed alarm. Meredith grabbed the papers from him. Her eyes darted across the page, finding the key numbers. 99.98%. She looked up at Derek, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and finally fury. "You have a daughter, a 10-year-old daughter." She stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. "You told me you never wanted kids before. You told me our baby would be your first." Derek tried to reach for her. "Meredith, please let me explain." She slapped his hand away. "Explain what? That you are a liar, that you abandoned your own child." She put her hands on her pregnant belly. "What kind of man does that?" She grabbed her purse and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Derek turned to me, his face twisted with rage. "You did this. You ruined everything." "No, Derek." I shook my head slowly. "You ruined everything. 10 years ago when you abandoned your daughter. 8 months ago when you started sleeping with your assistant. I am just making sure the truth finally comes out." Sandra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I will be filing for back child support. 10 years worth. My lawyer will be in contact." She took Lily's hand and walked toward the door, but the little girl paused, looking back at Derek. "Why did not you want me?" She asked, her voice small but clear. Derek could not answer. He just sat there speechless as his daughter walked away. I stood up, leaving the DNA results on the table. "Your lawyer can send the divorce papers to mine," I said. "I think we both know how this is going to end." I walked out of the restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of Derek's lies was no longer mine to carry. From now on, it was all his. The months following that dinner were not easy. Healing never is. But for the first time since Derek left, I felt like I was moving forward instead of drowning. Meredith broke up with Derek within a week of learning about Lily. I heard from mutual friends that she had moved back in with her parents in Atlanta. The engagement was off. She wanted nothing to do with a man who could abandon his own child. Derek's life unraveled quickly after that. The DNA revelation spread through his professional circles. Apparently, being known as the guy who denied his daughter for a decade was not great for his image at a family-friendly real estate firm. He was asked to resign 3 months after the dinner. Sandra's lawsuit for back child support was successful. The court ordered Derek to pay 10 years of missed payments, plus interest, a sum that significantly impacted his finances. More importantly, the court established a custody arrangement that required Derek to begin building a relationship with Lily, whether he wanted to or not. As for my divorce, it went exactly as Jenna predicted. Given Derek's documented infidelity and his pattern of deception, the judge ruled in my favor on nearly every point. I received 70% of our shared assets, including full ownership of the house. Derek was ordered to pay alimony for 2 years. I sold the house anyway. There were too many memories there, too many ghosts of the life I thought I was building. I used the money to buy a smaller place in East Nashville, a cozy 2-bedroom apartment with exposed brick walls and a tiny balcony overlooking the city. The first few months in my new place were quiet, lonely sometimes. I went to therapy twice a week, working through the betrayal and the grief and the anger. Some days I felt strong. Other days I could barely get out of bed. But slowly things started to change. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I took up yoga and discovered I actually enjoyed it. I adopted a gray cat named Winston, who had terrible manners but gave excellent cuddles. And unexpectedly, I found a new purpose. I started writing about my experience. Just blog posts at first, sharing my story anonymously on a website for people going through divorce. but the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of women wrote to me sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival. They said my words helped them feel less alone. Within 6 months, the blog had grown into something bigger, a community, a support network, women helping women through the worst chapters of their lives. Sandra and I stayed close. She became one of my best friends, connected by our shared history with Derek, but united by something much stronger. Our conversation stopped being about him long ago. Now we talked about everything else: her nursing career, my writing, the challenges of dating after divorce, the joy of watching Lily grow into a confident, happy young girl. I became Aunt Hannah to Lily, an honorary title that meant more to me than any relationship Derek ever gave me. She came to visit on some weekends, and we would bake cookies or watch movies or just talk about whatever was on her mind. She was smart and funny and so much stronger than any 10-year-old should have to be. One afternoon, about a year after the divorce was finalized, Lily asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Aunt Hannah," she said, "do you hate my dad?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "No," I told her. "I used to be very angry at him, but hate takes too much energy. And your dad, whatever his mistakes, gave me something important. What he gave me the chance to find out who I really am, and he gave me you." She hugged me tightly, and I realized I meant every word. My mother came to visit a few months after I settled into my new apartment. She had been devastated when I finally told her about Derek, but she had also been my rock through the aftermath. She stayed for a week helping me decorate my new place and cooking all my favorite childhood meals. On her last night, we sat on my tiny balcony with glasses of wine watching the Nashville skyline twinkle. "I am proud of you," she said, "not just for surviving this, for thriving." "I do not know about thriving," I replied. "I am just taking it one day at a time." She shook her head. "Hannah, look at what you have built: a new home, a meaningful career helping other women, friendships that matter. That is not just surviving, that is living." I let her words sink in. She was right. Somehow, without even noticing, I had built a new life from the ashes of the old one. The truth always surfaces, I said more to myself than to her. And when it does, it sets you free. She clinked her glass against mine. To freedom. I think about Derek sometimes, not with longing or regret, but with a kind of distant curiosity. Last I heard, he was still struggling. Meredith had the baby, a boy, but she refused to let Derek be involved in the child's life. He was paying child support for 2 children now while working a job that paid half his old salary. I do not take pleasure in his suffering, but I also do not feel sorry for him. He made his choices. He is living with the consequences. As for me, I am still writing, still healing, still figuring out what comes next. Some days, I wonder if I will ever trust someone enough to love again. Other days, I think that maybe being alone is not so bad after all. What I know for certain is the person Derek left behind is not the person I am today. She was a woman who defined herself by her marriage, who measured her worth by whether she could have children, who stayed silent when she should have spoken up. The woman I am now is different, stronger, more honest with herself and others. She knows that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel lonely. She knows that the worst thing that happens to you can also be the thing that sets you free. If you are watching this and you are going through something similar, I want you to know something. It gets better. Not right away, not easily, but eventually you will wake up one morning and realize that the pain has faded, that you have built something new, that the person who hurt you no longer has power over you. You are stronger than you think, and your story is not over. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything you thought you knew? Have you found strength you did not know you had? Share your story in the comments below. This community is built on our shared experiences, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need it. And if you are not subscribed yet, join our community so you do not miss the next story. Thank you for spending this time with me. Whatever you are going through, I am sending you strength and peace. Remember, the truth always finds its way to the surface, and when it does, it sets you free. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.